Mom, I've told you before, SUVs aren't just for people with kids anymore. And no, I don't know when I'm gonna give you any grandchildren. Although my golden doodle's kind of like a granddog to you anyway. Anyway, I gotta go film this video. In today's video, I'm gonna compare two of the most popular SUVs in the Lexus lineup, the NX350 versus the RX350. And we'll go over some of the things I've learned about these two vehicles over the last few years. But before we get into today's video, I'm gonna draw a name for our contest about if you can find me on Instagram and comment RX350 on one of my photos. And the winner today is going to get a Lexus package sent to them by me with some good Lexus swag. So today's winner, and it's an Instagram name, is Clint C2679. Clint, thank you for your continued support. I see you in the comment section and on Instagram all the time. And I'm gonna be sending you some nice Lexus swag. So thank you. Okay, getting right to some of the styling parts of these two vehicles. And yes, in this video, I'm gonna teach you what I like most about each one and what I don't like. So let's look at these front grills. So on the NX, we have a very straight up and down grille with not much tapering to it or anything like that. And we have the classic sort of trim surrounding that F-Sport grille. Because of it being F-Sport, it's also painted black. It's like a piano black around this grille, and it's the F-Sport hatching with the Lexus emblem right in the center, the plate bracket because we're here in Canada A, and then a little bit of trim towards the bottom here. On each side, we have actual venting. It's not fake venting, people, because it's an F-Sport. And it's, again, kind of creates the same shape and angles as that grille, but just off to the side there. In comparison to the RX, you'll notice the front end is very different on the RX, where we have this nose piece. And here's one of the things that Dustin goes back and forth with all the time. In fact, when it comes to the front grills of both these vehicles, I think I prefer the NX because it's just bigger and seems more aggressive. And it's one of those things that when you see an RX on the road or an NX on the road, it actually makes the RX look bigger because of the grille. And the nose piece here on the RX actually makes the vehicle look smaller from the front. Now, there are some other things to think about. Yes, it does, and it kind of looks like it was an afterthought sometimes, the more I get used to it. But I do also think it's part of the EV generational thing that was going on when this car was designed. What I mean by that is back when this car was being designed, we really thought EV was gonna be the market. So we saw some design language on things like the Audi e-tron or the BMW E-classes. E-classes? It's not an E-class. You know what I mean, the electronic BMWs. And grills on those cars are sort of just like decoration, like they're sort of fake and not really for air intake because you don't need an air intake. And this grille, or the top of this grille, sort of copied some of that design language. So that's why I think it's there. But the rest of the nose piece is bigger. Like the body lines on the RX are prominent. And even though that nose piece kind of makes it look like it's got a little snoot or snout, the rest of the front end has some presence to it. Where on the NX, that little baby snoot is a little bit smaller of a body panel and still has some angulars to things like the daytime running lights, which on the NX are above the headlights. So we have the LED headlights below the daytime running light and then the running light on top with a little bit of like, I don't know, a decorative shelf top piece that's not really doing anything on the top of that headlight. On the RX, we have an even more frosted daytime running light, and it's actually below those headlights. However, because the headlight casing has some other stuff going on, it's more like it's in the middle of the headlight casing, but below the actual headlights themselves, like the LED headlights. And this one has the triple beam system, so it's a little bit fancier. Anyway, okay, back to the RX grille. We have the washer lights, some venting on the sides, and actually this one, it's less of an actual intake than the NX, but we have some curb lamps, some different colors in the grille because it's the luxury version. We have some pearlescent grays and things like that. And overall, standing next to them, the RX hood especially seems a lot bigger than the NX hood. The NX has a different vision line where it sort of swoops around, and the RX is prominent to that snoot piece. And I want you to remember, even though the hood on the RX looks a lot bigger than the NX, underneath that hood is pretty much the exact same thing as underneath the NX. Some people might even say it's exactly the same thing, because they both have a turbocharged 4-cylinder powertrain. The same 4-cylinder turbocharged powertrain. Okay, so sitting on the side, I'm standing. Standing on the side of the NX and the RX, now we're gonna see some differences. In fact, if you couldn't tell the difference on the front of the vehicle when you're driving on the road, when you see the side, it's gonna be a big difference. Let's talk about some similarities. So they both have the electronic door latch, which I absolutely love. And it's not just getting into the car that I love, it's the exiting the car. That's really the part of the electronic door handle that I like the most, because you sort of just press a button and move out in one smooth motion instead of like using your elbow to like open it and stuff like that. But as you just heard, the door of the NX, super, super solid. Even though it's a smaller vehicle, it has a very satisfying clunk, I guess you can say, to it. We do have a body line going right in line with the door handle, and then it sort of fades up, or it sort of like takes off like an airplane would. I'm all about airplanes lately. Towards that rear quarter panel. This one being the Sport, we have a blacked out mirror cap, and because of that, also the top of the door handle is blacked out. And we have a gigantic 20-inch F-Sport wheel. And I like that this F-Sport wheel is actually fully black. It's a gloss black, but it's not matte or anything like that. So it's really shiny. I think it's easy to keep clean, and it has the Alenza tires on it. You'll notice that there is body color on the fender flares, where it used to be like a textured material. Both the NX and the RX have that. However, at the bottom of both doors, we still have the textured material, which I don't hate. I think that's a great thing. And standing next to it at 6'1", you'll see my height versus it. So I can see the roof, and I could touch the sunroof if I wanted to. I do like that the NX is blacked out. So we got sort of like a blacked out chrome. It's not even smoked, it's blacked out around those two windows with a black B pillar and this tiny little window in the back. It's like a quarter glass or something like that. And then we see the rear start to come to us on this quarter panel here. It's a small quarter panel, but we see some sort of like body line starting to unfold to give us a hint at what's behind. But let's go over to the RX. So we have a slightly bigger wheel on a Bridgestone tire. It's 21-inch on this package. The body color that I talked about, the door handles that I talked about on the NX are the same. The doors are just a little bit bigger. So we have a slightly bigger, but equally as solid and the same sound of clunk, I guess we could say, on that side doors. Now, the body lines themselves, we have more of a subtle body line above the door handle that, again, takes off as we get to the rear of it. And then we have this very sleek indentation on the bottom of the front door and the rear door. The reason this is important to pay attention to is whenever we see some drastic body lines shift and move like that, it's a luxury vehicle. You won't see a cheap vehicle have, big body lines or big curvy lines in the middle of the door like that, because it does take some engineering to do so. At the bottom, we have that textured plastic, and I want you to pay attention to even just the silhouette of the RX itself. Yes, it is taller, like I'm 6'1", I can touch the sunroof, but I can't see most of the roof. And it almost gets bigger as it goes to the rear, and then it kind of tapers off in a very sleek and stylish way. And also, the way that the windows look, we'll see we have a quarter glass that swoops very stylishly, love using that word, towards the rear of the vehicle. There's some chrome, this is chrome. We have some chrome that is above the window, below the window, a little bit on the mirror caps. Surprisingly not on the door handles, we still have that black door handle cap. But you'll see it's a little bit more drawn out, the side of that RX, a little bit wavier, and I would say not as sharp of lines. It's more curvy than it is sharp. But let's get to the rear of the vehicle. Okay, so the back of the RX, you've heard me talk about literally 1,000 times if you've been watching this channel. But it is my favorite rear end in the Lexus lineup. So we have this taillight that goes underneath the very sleek Lexus rear emblem, and just the angles and shapes and curves of the trunk is really attractive. So we have this angled rear glass with a hidden wiper blade tucked up under that rear visor. It's one of the only Lexuses that do that. At the back, we have hidden exhausts and a little bit of plastic painted and then plastic again for that rear diffuser cover thing. And then just our little RX 350 off to the side. But let's look inside. And this is gonna be a big consideration if you're looking at the RX versus the NX. The reason I say that is they're both really approachable heights for loading and taking things out, loading and unloading, someone would say. And on this RX, we see a really wide footprint. It comes with the cargo net and it comes with the tonneau cover standard from the dealership. Although if you lose that tonneau cover, let's just say don't lose it because it's pretty expensive to replace. So if you're gonna take it out, make sure you know where you put it, because if I'm gonna appraise your trade, you gotta have that in there because it's worth a lot of money. And then because of that angular glass rear hatch, you'll notice this line here does create a little bit of a shallow stack the further you go back in the trunk, but the more forward you go in the trunk, it is tall and you could fold down those rear seats by the touch of a button. And I have a few buttons off to the side there that I can do that with. We could very handily cover over that rear trunk space and just with one finger, lift up on it and it'll retract. So a very wide footprint, not very tall towards the back, but still very, very useful. Over to the rear of the NX, we have the same but different taillights, and it's different because it's actually three pieces. So we have that classic L off to the sides and then the katana above the LEXUS, and it's that same LEXUS. The cool thing about the katana piece is just what I nicknamed it, I don't know if that's real, is the three-dimensional aspect of it. And this is something the NX has always done a great job of having a really nice back end or tail light. And the red is very clear, the diffusion is really crisp, so forth and so forth. Down as we get lower, we have a diffuser, a hidden exhaust, as well as some color. Here, it's all plastic. It's like that soft texture plastic. Really cool thing about that is it's cheap to replace. So if you do have stone chips or scrapes or scratches, that textured piece, you don't have to repaint, which is nice. Then we have a little bit of a bumper cover here, the NX 350 off to the side, and of course, we have the exposed wiper, which you probably already noticed when we walked up to it. But let's look at the inside of the NX. So back here, we do have a similar height for loading in and out of things from the RX. However, there's less of an angle. So as you put things back to the back of the trunk, yes, it still has a little bit of an angle at the top, but you won't lose as much height as you were in the RX. It is noticeably skinnier back here, so it's not as wide of a footprint, and you'll notice things like this is your tonneau cover. So instead of the one that sort of retracts, this one's a foldable piece. Now, because of it being foldable, you can just put it under the rear floor. There's like a spot for it under there. And when you think about it, it's just to block people from like looking in and seeing what type of, groceries you have back there or whatever. Maybe your trip to Best Buy, you got, some electronics that you want to hide. And it doesn't matter the quality of the tonneau cover at that point. However, if I was comparing the quality, this one definitely feels a little bit cheaper because that one that rolls out feels like leather and like feels heavier duty. So that's that. Still has the net, still has some storage space off to the side. You can still fold down those seats, although it's 60-40 in the NX. On the RX, it's like 60-20-20, where you can like customize what is the 60 and what is the 40. So definitely something to keep in mind. Still very usable space. No one's ever been really disappointed in the NX for space that I've heard of anyway. Okay, sitting in the NX 350, I definitely feel sporty. And this is a sport package, so don't get me wrong. But what I mean by that is there's no need for anything else in here, right? We have the screen very close and facing me. I have heads-up display in this one. Everything is what it needs to be without a whole lot of anything else going on. It's a little bit smaller than the RX for sure, but don't forget, the NX was originally based on the IS platform, meaning it was kind of like a car SUV, a car UV, I guess we could call it. And we don't really sacrifice any amenities. A couple differences is we have our drive mode selector exposed and in the middle, which is great. So without having to really take your eye off the road, You can switch between Sport Plus and Sport and Comfort and Eco and Normal and all these other things. Even in something like a base F Sport Series 1, you get those types of features. Also, the shifter is the new electronic shifter, which is in all the latest Lexuses. We have the armrest that opens up both ways. The sport seats are amazing. Maybe taller people will say they wish the seats extended a little bit under their thighs a little bit more. But for the most part, anybody that's super tall, I would recommend the RX2 anyway. So this is like for that person that wants, you know, the sporty driving of a car, but in the practicality of an SUV. And you really don't have to sacrifice a ton of features, like a fully loaded NX versus a fully loaded RX. Pretty much if you're going through a checklist, they have all the same things. Everything from Mark Levinson to auto park, to heads-up display, to panel roof, to bird's eye view, to wireless charging. The list goes on. You can get pretty much them spec'd out the same, but different. Because now when you look at the fit and finish, the NX has a very different finish than the RX. There's just less of those over-the-top details, I guess you could say. Okay, sitting in the RX, it feels so different. I mean, when you're sitting in the front seat, it feels so different. So what I mean by that is, yes, this is more of a fully loaded one, but we have things like Ultra Suede, which is simply just there to make the interior feel more luxurious. We have more of a layered dash. We have more wood grain. We have more space in front of us. It feels like I'm sitting on a couch instead of sitting on a bar stool. Not there's anything wrong with the bar stool, but I mean the space-wise and like the posture-wise and stuff like that. I noticed between me and the front passenger, it's a bigger center console with more space and room for activities and luxury. It has the same size armrest kind of, which is interesting. And we do have, you know, wireless chargers and the adjustable cup thing where it goes up and down. The NX doesn't have that. And overall, the interior of the RX just is that step up of luxury. I would more compare this to the interior of like an LS or full-size SUV than something of like, you know, a car or small SUV. I do notice there is a feature that I forgot about that's only in the RX and not the NX, and that is the driver monitoring system. I don't think the NX has that, or I haven't noticed it in any of the packages, where if you do look away and I'm checking out like a dog walking on the street, or like, you know, if there's a cool car for sale on the side of the road and I'm looking at it, the car might tell me to be like, hey, put your eyes back on the road. So some people love that, some people hate it. I think it's cool and does a purpose. Also, the sound system in the RX is very full, I would say, and that's just because I think it's a bigger and the shape of it and things like that. But it is really hard to compare that because it is subjective for sure. But overall, like I said, that front seat, it's just very spacious. And the drive of it says a similar story as well. But let's check out the rear seats, because that's really what a big difference is on these two cars. Okay, so sitting in the back of the RX and starting with the rear seats here, there is a lot. And I mean by that is, this is a size of back seat that you could be the passenger back here, or like, I could even own the car and want to sit back here. We have a ginormous armrest that has cup holders and a storage spot. I'm not sure what anybody stores in their back seat, but maybe their kids do. And that folds up and down quite easily. This particular package has heated and cooled seats back here, but you know, some of the fully loaded NXs have that too. Little pocket map. We have curtains that go up and down, manually, of course, but they're still back here. And even the door panel, even though it's the rear seat, we still see things like the Ultra Suede and the Mark Levinson sound system and things like that. And this just screams mid-size to upper level luxury. This is one that I could sit in the back seat for a long car ride with two other friends and still be comfortable. I mean, one other friend would be the most comfortable, but someone could definitely fit back here. The seat itself has a lot of substance to it. It goes under my thighs. Like, I would say even sitting here, the RX probably goes further up my thighs than the NX front seats do. So that just shows you just the sheer space of it. And it makes sense why the trunk on the RX isn't bigger than it is. It's because the designers definitely wanted to give that rear seat the same luxury feel as the front. And they did a really good job. So sitting in the back of the NX now, even right away, that rear support under the legs and the posture of the legs is very different. Like, we have more of a straight up and down angle because of there's just less substance here in the back seat. And of course, because that front seat is a little bit closer to me, the roof seems a little bit closer to me. We still have things like the armrest is just not as big or have as many features in it, so that's totally fine. Some of these higher packages still have things like heated seats back here, etc., etc. It's just a little tighter. It's almost like the opposite of what we saw in the RX. It gave the NX so much space up front that it did take away a little bit from this second row, because Lexus figured the buyer for this probably isn't going to have passengers in the back all the time, maybe just once in a while. And because of that, we can make it a little bit smaller. So overall, still good. I could be on a car ride with one other person for sure. Two other people from me would be almost a no-go because it'd be so tight back here. But for what it is, for a compact SUV, and that's what this segment is the small SUV segment, it still has a decent amount of space that in a pinch, you could drive someone around back here, for sure. So this might beg the question, and you might ask me, Dustin, which one would you choose or which one would you buy? And the answer to me is the RX 350, and it mainly comes down to two reasons. One is the styling of that rear end of the RX is so sleek and cool and high-end looking. It's better than anything else in its class, including the Porsche, which I love the look of the Porsche otherwise. The RX is better for that. And also the interior. I'm a little bit taller. I love that extra space in the front end. I love big luxury cars, and the RX gives me big luxury car vibes. However, the NX is a blast to drive. Anytime I have an NX as a demo, I find myself taking the long way home, going down something that's a little bit windy, or putting it in that Sport Plus mode, and using that powertrain that's also used in the bigger RX in this tiny little hatchback almost, and having some fun with it. It's more of that sporty driving experience, when after all, the N is for nimble, and that's a great way to think of these two vehicles. The N is for nimble, the R is for radiant, the RX is a radiant, luxurious ride, and the NX is a nimble, fun ride. So let me know in the comments below which one you would choose, the RX over the NX, and at the end of the day, they're both a great choice, especially in the hybrid variants. So I'm Dustin Mason. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure you hit like and subscribe to see more Lexus related content.